The man's hands would not stop shaking, and that was how I knew he meant to leave something he loved. I had stood at the marker window 9 years, and I had learned to read hands before faces. A man pledging a copper pot sets it down flat. A man pledging his father's saddle turns it once, so you see the good side. A man pledging what he loves cannot put it down at all. He holds it out over the ledge and waits for you to take the weight from him because he has not the strength to let go himself. It was past midnight, and the fair was 3 weeks off, and the lamps in the vault passage were down to their last inch. I had come down myself because I could not sleep, and because Sesk was 71 and I had stopped pretending the night watch was his. "Name," I said. "Odric Farr," his voice came out in pieces. "Grain hauler out of Little Vane." "Debt." 40 measures against the Crown Granary, spring seed. The river took the low field and then it took the wagon. He wet his lips. "I'll have it back at the fair, on my life." "They all say it on their life. I have a whole ledger of lives." "Marker," I said, and put my hand out, palm up, the way I had put it out 4,000 times, and he did not put anything into it. He stepped sideways instead, and behind him, sitting on the cold flags of my vault passage with her arms around her knees, was a child. She was perhaps 6. She had a gray blanket around her shoulders that was too big and a wooden horse in her fist that was too small, and she was looking at me with the flat, patient interest of someone who has been woken up and told they are going on a journey and has decided to see how it turns out. "You can't," I said. "The law says a man may pledge anything that's his." He said it fast. He had rehearsed it on the road. "That's the wording, anything that's his." I looked. I paid a clerk in Little Vane 4 coppers to read me the wording. "She is not a thing." "She's mine." His face broke apart while he said it. "Her mother's dead and her father's dead, and there's me, and if I lose the hauling I lose her anyway, only slower and out there instead of in here." He was crying now without seeming to know it. 3 weeks, that's all. The fair's in 3 weeks and I'll have the 40 measures and I'll come and take her back and she'll never know she was in a ledger. I have been told I have a hard face. I have never worked at it. It is only that my face does what my father's did, and my father's face did nothing at all while he ruined 700 families for sport, and so I inherited the look without the entertainment. I looked at that man a long moment, then I looked past him at the child. "Come here," I said to her. She got up and came, dragging the blanket. She stopped at the ledge and had to tip her head all the way back to see me. Her hair was the color of dust, and there was a print of somebody's thumb in the dirt on her cheek. "Do you know where you are?" I asked. "The king's vault," she said, "where the pledges go." "Do you know what a pledge is?" She nodded seriously. "It's a thing you leave so they know you're coming back." Some part of me that had been asleep 9 years turned over. "That's right," I said. "Uncle Odric said I'm a marker." She held up the wooden horse to show me. 3 legs. The 4th had gone somewhere before she was born by the look of the wear. "Markers stay till they're paid." Behind her, Odric made a sound. I want to be exact about what happened next, because I have had a long time to be sorry about it, and being sorry has never once made a thing untrue. I took her. Understand what my vault is. My father borrowed against the future the way other men drink, and when he died the hold's word was worth nothing, and no man in Tal Siren would lend to another because there was no law that lasted longer than the lender's temper. So I made a law that did not care what I felt. Bring a thing of worth. I will price it with my own hand, and my price is the price, and no man's grandfather and no woman's rank changes it. Redeem it by the last day of the summer fair, a year and a day, and it goes back into your hands untouched. Fail, and it is sold at the fair, and the difference comes back to you in copper. 4,000 markers sat in my vault that night. 4,000. A widow's brass kettle, a boy's first bridal, 91 wedding rings from the bad winter. They sat there because their owners knew the way you know the ground is under you, that the king's hand did not move. That a Vesk king would not decide at midnight, that this one didn't count. If I had refused Odric Farr, I would have been right. I would also have been a king who reads the ledger and then does as he likes. And the next morning every hungry man in Little Vane would have learned that the crown's word is a matter of the crown's mood, and the widow's kettle would have been worth nothing to borrow against, because a thing is only worth what the law will hold it to. Bend it for 1 child, and 4,000 poorer people lose the only credit they will ever have. So I did not bend it, I priced her, God forgive me, I put my hand out, and I did the thing I do. That is my gift, if it is a gift. I have had it since I was a boy. I take a thing in my hand, and I know what it is worth, not the tale of it, not what a man will swear it is worth, the true weight of it in the world. A bridle, a bolt of felt, a ring that was cast in 3 days for a girl who was already pregnant. It comes up through the palm like cold or heat. It is why my father's ruin stopped at my hands and went no further. I laid 2 fingers on the top of that child's head, very lightly, the way you'd touch a lamb. Nothing came. Not a low number, not a high one. Nothing at all, the way a bell does not ring underwater. I stood in my own vault with my hand on a child's hair, and for the first time since I was 9 years old, the world declined to tell me what a thing was worth. I took my hand back. 40 measures against the granary, I said, and my voice came out level, which I have never been more ashamed of. Cesc, write it. Cesc wrote it. He did not look at me while he wrote it, which is the closest that old man has ever come to striking me. 3 weeks, Audric said. 3 weeks, and he reached for her and then didn't, because you do not touch a marker once it's over the ledge. That's the law, too. He knew it. He'd paid 4 coppers to have it read to him. He went out into the dark. She watched the door a while after it shut, not crying, just watching it, the way you watch a road. Where do I stay? She said at last. What is your name? Rend. Ren, I said, you may stay anywhere in this hold that is warm. She looked around the vault passage, at the stone and the shelves, and the 4,000 pledges of the poor of Tal Sirin lying in their brass-stagged rows, and then she sat back down on the flags with her 3-legged horse. Markers stay in the vault, she said. Marit Andri came before dawn. I had not sent for her. I had sent for no one. I had sat down at the ledge with my head in my hands, which is not a thing kings are painted doing. Cesc had gone up the stair on his own account, and Cesc is old and slow and disloyal in exactly one direction. She came down the passage without hurrying. She never hurries. She was carrying a lamp and a folded quilt, and she had put her boots on over her nightdress, and her hair was down, and I remember thinking nothing is the truth. I remember that the passage was very quiet. You should know who she was, because the hold knew and everyone had long ago stopped saying it aloud. Her clan is a word now. When I was 14, the Andri ran the eastern grass and my father broke them, and what was left of them sent their daughter to Ashmark at 9 years old as a treaty ward, which is a courteous word for a pledge with a heartbeat. Her term ended when she was 19. I signed the release myself. I remember my hand shaking on the seal. She stayed. 9 years she has stayed, unpaid, in 3 rooms over the north stair, keeping the hold's foundlings, the ones the fair leaves behind, the ones the winter makes. She has no mother, no brother, no cousin, no clan. There is not one living soul in the grass who shares her blood. And in 9 years, Marit Andri has never once asked me for anything. Not a coin, not a favor, not an apology, not the road home, which does not exist. Nothing. Do you know what that does to a man who prices things? Every soul who comes down my passage wants a number from me. She never wanted a number. She was the only person in my kingdom I could not read because she never put anything on the ledge. She stopped at the child and knelt down and put the lamp on the flags. Hello, she said, I'm Marit. I heard there's someone new. I'm a marker, said Ren. I heard that too. She did not flinch and she did not soften her voice, which is a thing I have watched her not do 100 times and never once got used to. Is that blanket warm? No. No, Marit agreed. It's a bad blanket. I have a better one. She held out the quilt and let the child take it herself instead of putting it round her, and then she sat down on the cold flags of my vault beside her, in her boots and her nightdress, and arranged her skirts as though she were sitting down to dinner. Then she looked up at me. I had been ready for it. I had been building the wall the whole time she came down the passage. The wording, the gap, the 4,000, the widow's kettle, the credit of every poor man in the grass, all of it stacked and true and immovable. She did not attack the wall, she said. What number did you give her? 40 measures. No, Marit said. Your hand, what did your hand say she was worth? The lamp went on burning. Nothing, I said. Nothing, she repeated. It said nothing at all. Marit Andri looked at me for a long moment, and something moved behind her face that I could not price either. Good, she said quietly. Then at least you're not a monster. You're only a man with a bad law. And and she lay down on the stones of my vault beside that child and pulled half the quilt over herself. And that is where she slept, and where she slept every night after, and I stood there in my own hold like a man who has been handed something too heavy and cannot find anywhere to put it down. Ashmark keeps wolves the way other holds keep dogs, which is to say badly and on their own terms. They came down the third night. I heard them before I saw them, the particular scrape of claws on worked stone that no other animal in the grass makes. And by the time I got to the turn of the passage, there were 4 of them in my vault, and the big gray bitch that has never in 11 years let me put a hand on her was lying across the doorway of the 3rd shelf with her chin on her paws. Wren was asleep against her ribs. Marrot was sitting up with her back to the oak, reading a tally list by lamplight as though a hundredweight of wolf were a common feature of an evening. "They've been coming since the first night," she said without looking up. "I didn't tell you." "Why not?" "Because you'd have found a reason it was your fault." My own wolf had gone down the passage ahead of me and stopped 6 feet short, the way he does. He is a plain gray thing, no bigger than the bitch, and he has been at my shoulder since I was 11, and there is nothing magical about him whatsoever except that he is mine and he knows things before I do. He would not go closer to that shelf. He sat down in the middle of my vault and looked at the sleeping child and would not go closer, and I understood him perfectly, because neither would I. "They came for her," I said. "They came for the warm one on the floor," said Marrot. "Wolves aren't oracles, Reuven. They're opportunists with good taste." It was the first joke she had ever made to me. I did not know what to do with it. I stood there in my own vault and held it like a man holding a hot coal, and after a while I went back up the stair and I did not sleep, and that was the 3rd night of 43. I want to set down what the vault season was like, because I have found that people imagine it as one long grief, and it was not. That is the cruelty of it. It was the best season of my life, and I was paying for it in a currency I had not yet been shown the size of. Wren learned the vault in 9 days. I do not exaggerate. By the 9th day she could walk the shelves in the dark and tell you what was on them. The pharaoh bridles in the 1st bay, the felt in the 2nd where it was dry, the small things in brass-stagged boxes along the 3rd. She learned the tally marks before she learned her letters, because the tallies were what there was. Cesc taught her, out of pure sedition. I would come down at dusk and find a 71-year-old man and a 6-year-old girl on the flags with 40 brass tags between them playing a game whose rules I was never once told. "What's this one?" Cesc would say. 8.5. "And this?" "That's not a number, that's a place, that's Little Vane." A pause. "That's where I'm from." "That's right." "Uncle Audric's from there." "That's right." And Cesc would put the tag down and pick up another one, and neither of them would say anything for a while, and I would stand in the dark at the turn of the passage like a thief in my own house. She started the game with me on the 11th day. She had worked out what I could do. I never told her. Someone did, or she watched, which is more likely because that child watched everything. She came up to the ledge one evening while I was working and put a stone on it. "What's that worth?" "Nothing," I said. "It's a stone." "Do it properly." So I picked it up. It was a stone. "Nothing, it is a stone from the yard." "Do this one," a tally tag. "Half a copper, it's the brass, not the tag," a bootlace. "Nothing," a tooth, which I did not ask about. "Nothing, and put it down," Cesc's knife. 2 measures, and it was made in Pharaoh 40 years ago by a man who was left-handed. She went very still at that. Then she was gone up the passage at a run and back in 90 seconds with a fistful of things she had no business having, and we did it all. A button, a horseshoe nail, a scrap of felt, the lid of something. She held each one up like a magistrate. I named the number. She checked my face for lies, found none, and moved on. And then she held up the horse. 3 legs, worn to nothing at the neck where a thumb had gone over it 10,000 times. I took it, wood, common wood badly cut by a man with no gift for it at all. "Nothing," I said. "Less than nothing, it is a bad carving." Wren nodded, satisfied, and took it back and said, "Uncle Audric made it. He's not good at it." And she went off to bed on the floor of my vault under Marrot Andre's quilt with the worthless thing in her fist, and I sat at that ledge for an hour and could not have told you my own name. I was not idle. I want that written too. A kingdom does not stop because a king is unwell in his mind. The fair was coming, and the fair is the year 40 days when the whole grass comes to Ashmark, when a hauler's debt and a widow's kettle and 1,100 head of cattle all change hands under the same dust, and I did the work. I sat the council. I read the granary tallies. I priced 800 markers into their bays with my own hand, because that is the law and my hand is the law's hand. I did it badly. Have her caught 2 errors in a week, which had never happened, and said nothing, which was worse. And at night I went down the stair. I did not go down to see her. I want that understood, because I have never been able to lie about this part even to myself. I went down because the vault was mine, and the ledger was mine, and a king may walk in his own hold at any hour. And if the hour was always the hour when a 6-year-old was being taught to plait a horsehair cord in the 3rd bay, that was a coincidence that recurred 43 times. I would stop at the turn of the passage. There is a place there where the stone folds and the lamplight does not reach, and you can hear everything. I heard Marit Andre teach that child to plait a cord, to whistle, to say the 11 kingdoms in order, to spit properly, which took 2 evenings and which she has denied ever since. I heard her explain, without one word of softening, exactly what a marker was and exactly what would happen on the last day of the fair, and exactly what everyone was doing about it, because Wren had asked, and Marit does not lie to children. She says a lie is just a debt with interest and children pay it. And I heard the 2 of them talk about nothing at all, which is the thing I still cannot think about very long. Whether wolves dream, whether the fair men's stilts hurt, whether the king is sad or only made that way. Marit, both. Whether you could ride the gray bitch if you were small enough. Whether little Vane is far, whether Marit had a mother. Everyone had a mother, Wren said. That's how it works. Then I had one. Where is she? Dead, said Marit Andre, on the floor of my vault in the same voice she uses for the tally lists. A long time ago now, in the East. Is that sad? There was a pause of about the length of a breath. It was, Marit said. Now it's just true. Give me the other end of that cord. I stood in the dark with my hand flat on the cold stone, and I understood, with the total clarity of a man being sentenced, that I was in love with a woman my family had ruined, who slept on the floor of my vault beside a child I had priced, and that I would sooner have my hand off at the wrist than say one word of it aloud. The tea was the 14th night. She passed me a cup, that is all. There was a brazier at the turn of the passage by then, because the flags were cold and I had said nothing about it, and neither had she, and she was pouring, and she passed me the cup, and our fingers touched. Nothing. I have handled 40,000 objects in my life. Every one of them told me. A cup is a simple thing, a cup is a number a child could learn, the clay and the firing and the man's hour, and the world went silent as a bell under deep water and stayed silent. I got up the stair somehow. I remember Cesc saying something, and I remember not answering. And that night, alone in the dark, I went back down, and I did a thing I have never confessed to any living soul but one. I took hold of everything within reach. A lamp, 3 coppers, old dear this year. The ledger, the binding was Pharaoh work, the leather good, 6 measures. My own dagger, a great deal, and most of it was my grandfather. The bay of Pharaoh bridles, one after another, every one of them singing up my arm exactly as it should. The 91 wedding rings from the bad winter, out of the brass-tagged box, one at a time in the dark like a madman. Gold, thin, thinner, a good one, 3 cast in a hurry, one that was somebody's mother's. Every single one told me. My hand worked perfectly. Then I picked up the quilt, which she had dragged half off in her sleep, to put it back over her. Nothing. I stood in my vault in the middle of the night, holding a quilt, and the world had no opinion about it whatsoever. I tried the lamp again. 3 coppers, the quilt, nothing, the lamp, 3 coppers, the quilt. Nothing she had touched had a price any more. Nothing she had touched has had a price since. I put it back over her very carefully, and she did not wake, and I went and sat on the bottom step of the north stair until the gray came, and that was the 14th night, and I did not tell her, and I want to say why exactly, because it was not nobility. It was arithmetic. She had been a pledge in Vesk hands from the age of 9. 19 years. Every soul who ever wanted a thing from her had been able to take it, and the one man in the grass who could still take something from her was standing in his own vault at 3 in the morning holding her quilt. If I had gone to her and said what my hand had done, she would have had to answer. That is what she is. She would have waited and been kind, and I would never in this life have known whether the kindness was hers or the debt's. So I said nothing, For 9 years I said nothing, and then for 43 days I said nothing harder. Audric Farr did not come in 3 weeks. The rider came on the 19th day, which was the second day of the fair, and I took the word standing in my own yard in the dust with the whole grass roaring outside the wall. Little Vane, sire, the hauler. Far. Aye, he went north. North, I said. The rider was young, and he did not know what he was holding. The salt roads, sire, for the quick money. There's men'll pay a hauler 4 times the grain rate on the salt if he'll go without company. He shrugged. He went without company. And they found him at Faro, in a granary. He's alive, he added quickly, seeing something in my face that I did not know was there. Legs broken in 2 places, and his wagon's gone and his team's gone. They took the wagon and the team and 11 measures he had on him, and they broke the leg so he'd not follow. I stood there in the dust. 3 weeks. He had done it in 3 weeks. A man with a broken field and a dead sister and a child in a ledger had looked at the calendar and gone north alone on the only road in the grass where a man can be worth more dead than paid. And he had done it for 40 measures, and he was lying in a granary at Faro further from 40 measures than the night he started. Sire, said the rider, there's a thing. He's been asking the granary man to write for him. He's got no letters. Write what? A message to a child, the rider said, at Ashmark. Only he's got no money for a writer, and the granary man won't do it for nothing. I gave him 8 coppers and told him to go back to Faro and tell the granary man to write whatever that man asked and to keep writing it. And I did not tell anybody I had done it. And the letters came, 4 of them, badly spelled, in another man's hand. And Merritt read them to Wren on the floor of my vault. And I stood at the turn of the passage in the dark, and listened to a broken hauler tell a 6-year-old that he was coming, that the roads were slow, that he was coming. That she was to mind Miss Andre, that he was coming. By my law, Wren was mine until the last day of the fair. Then, unredeemed, she was forfeit to the crown. Forfeit to the crown? I had written those words. I had thought myself clever when I wrote them. I called the ledger keepers up on the 20th day, and I put it to them plainly, strike the wording. A man may pledge anything that is his except a living person. 6 words, 1 afternoon's work. Haverdun has kept the ledger since before I could ride. He heard me out, and then he said, and the 4,000. What of them? Sire, half the markers in that vault were taken under a wording. Not a good wording, a wording. He is not a cruel man. He was not enjoying it. The day you strike a line because a case is hard, every man in the grass learns that the lines can be struck. And then the widow at Little Vane goes to borrow against her kettle, and the granary man says, well, that's under a wording, isn't it? And who's to say what the king will think of that wording next spring? So I am to sit here. You are to be the king who does not move, Haver said. That was the whole of it. That was the entire of what you built. Haver, she is 6. I know it. He put his hands flat on the table, and they were an old man's hands, spotted and steady. Sire, I have kept a ledger through 2 Vesk kings. Your father took what he liked and called it a right. You take nothing and call it a law. I have buried more people under your father's rights than I can count, and not one under your law. And if you break the law tonight for the best reason a man ever had, then by spring there'll be no difference between you, because there'll be no rule, only the king's heart. And the king's heart is a thing that moves. He looked up. It is the only compliment I have ever paid you. You are the king who does not move. I did not answer him. There was nothing to answer. But I was not the only one who could read the wording, and on the 24th day Vasca Turn read it too. He came to me after the council rose, at the end of the long table in that easy way he has. He holds the northern bays. He is not a villain. I want to be fair to him, because it would be a great comfort to me if he had been a villain. He is a man who saw a problem and brought me its solution, and he brought it kindly. The child in the vault, he said. What of her? The hauler's not coming, sire. Everyone knows it. Pharaoh's 4 weeks off with a whole leg. He let that sit. So on the last day she's forfeit, to the crown, which is you, and you can't keep her, because a king who keeps a forfeited child is a story that runs to the 11 kingdoms by winter and never stops running. He spread his hands. Assign the forfeit, that's all. It's in the wording the crown may assign. Assign her to me, and my wife will raise her decent in the North Bays. And there's no story, and your law never moved an inch, and the whole grass sees the king did exactly what he wrote down. It was the correct answer. That is what I need you to understand. It was legal and it was kind, and his wife is a good woman, and I have never in 9 years had a cleaner piece of counsel put in front of me. I heard myself say, no. Sire, no. He waited, he is patient, Vasca. May I ask on what ground? And I stood at the end of my own counsel table, and I had none, not one. There is no ground in the ledger for a man's chest. I could not say, because she sleeps on the floor of my vault, and there is a woman beside her whose quilt has no price, and if you take that child north, I will not survive the quiet. That is not a ground. That is a symptom. On the ground that the crown may assign, I said, and the crown does not choose to. He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his face changed, and I have never known to this day whether it was pity or suspicion, or simply a man revising an estimate. As you like, sire, he said, and went out, and I stood there and knew with total certainty that I had bought perhaps 16 days. I went down the stair that night and did not stop at the turn. There were 4 markers on the 3rd shelf by then. I had not been counting. I should have been counting. I'm doing it too, Wren told me. Doing what? She showed me. In the space where a marker sits was the wooden horse with 3 legs. Beside it, a scrap of the brass tally I'd given her to play with, and on the brass she had scratched, in the enormous careful letters of a child who has just learned that letters exist, ODRIC. It's a pledge, she said, so he knows I'm coming back for him. I stood in that passage with my hand on the shelf. You have it backwards, I managed. The pledge is left by the one who owes. I know, Wren said patiently, the way you explain to a slow adult. I owe him. He came for me every time he came. She looked up at me with those flat, dust-colored eyes. So I left a marker, now he'll know. Behind her, Merritt had stopped plating. There were 3 more by the end of that week. A blue button for Merritt, so she knows I'm staying, which Merritt accepted with a gravity I will remember when I am dying. A bird's skull, very small, very white, for Cesc, who had been giving her his bread. A tuft of gray out of the big bitch's coat for the wolves, which she would not explain and I did not press. And a 4th space on the shelf, empty, squared off with a fingernail the way she squared off all of them. I noticed it on the 28th day and I did not ask. I want to be exact. I did not ask because I was afraid of the answer, and I was afraid of the answer because I had already guessed it and could not bear to be right, and because a man who has priced a child does not get to hope that the child has left him a pledge. I looked at that empty square every night for 12 nights and said nothing. The fair runs 40 days. On the 11th, I went to have her done at midnight and told him to open the vault to me as a debtor. He thought I had lost my mind. I made him sit down. The law says a marker is redeemed when the debt is paid, I said. Read me the line. He read it, he knows it by heart. He read it anyway because he is Haver. Now tell me who it says must pay. The old man stopped. I watched him go back over 60 years of a ledger in about 4 seconds. It doesn't say, he said. It has never said. Nobody thought to ask, because nobody in this kingdom has ever had 40 measures spare for a stranger. I sat down opposite him. I have 1,100 head on the eastern grass. My mother's herd. Mine, not the crown's, the only thing in Tal Siren that is mine and not the hold's. Sire, his voice had gone very careful. Those are your mother's horses. 40 measures against Odric Farr, I said. Paid, enter it. Haver's pen did not move. By whom, sire? By Reuven Vesk, not the crown, the man. Sire, enter it, Haver. He entered it, 11 letters. It took him about as long as it takes to break a leg. And then, because he is old and slow, and has watched a Vesk king ruin the grass once already and thought he would never see it twice, he sat back and looked at what he had written and said, and the others. I had not meant to. I swear before anything that hears kings that I had not meant to. But the shelves were right there, and it was midnight, and the 91 wedding rings out of the bad winter were 3 feet from my hand. How many are 3 years unredeemed? I said. 640. How many of those are the ring, the kettle, the bridle, the ones that come back at the fair and go straight out again the next spring? Haver was quiet a moment. Most, sire. Most of them are the same 40 families going round and round. They redeem in the good year and pledge again in the bad, and there's never a year when they're clear. Then they are not debts, I said. They are a rent. I have been charging the poorest people in my kingdom rent on their own kettles for 9 years and calling it a law. Sire, that is not. Price them, I said. All 640, and enter Reuven Vesk against everyone. It took the rest of the fare. I want to put down what that was actually like, because I have noticed that people who have heard some version of it imagine a grand night. It was not a night. It was 29 of them, and it was tedious, and it was the finest work I have ever done. We did it after the vault closed, which was midnight with 2 lamps, because a third would have been seen from the yard. Haver read the line. I went to the bay and found the marker and put my hand on it and said the number, and Haver entered the number, and then Haver entered my name, and then we did the next one. 640 times. Some nights we did 40. Some nights we did 9, because Haver's hand cramped, and he would not let me write, on the ground that a ledger in the debtor's own hand is worth nothing, which is the single most Haver sentence ever spoken. Cesc carried out the tallies. That was the other half of it. The money had to come from somewhere, and it came out of the eastern grass in pieces, and every piece had to leave Ashmark without a word. And so a 71-year-old man walked out of my hold every third night with a bundle of my mother's herd under his coat in the form of brass, and came back with nothing, and did not once ask me a question. 1,100 head. He carried it out about 90 at a time. He looked like a man carrying a coffin, and once at the door he stopped, and I thought he was going to speak, and he did not, and that was as close as we ever came to discussing it. The markers themselves are what I remember. The kettle was the 4th night. Brass mended twice, the handle wrapped in wire by somebody who had done it in the dark. 2 coppers. A widow in Little Vane had been borrowing 2 coppers against that kettle every spring for 11 years, and paying it back every autumn and borrowing it again, and I had been the man on the other side of that ledge for 9 of those years and had never once thought about it, because 2 coppers is nothing, because it is such a very small number. 2 coppers, I said, enter it. The bridles were the 9th. The felt was the 12th, and the felt was rotten because we had kept it 3 years in the wrong bay, and it was worth nothing, and I paid the full price and told Haver to enter it at the price it was pledged at, and Haver said that was not the law, and I said it was tonight, and he entered it, and neither of us said anything else for an hour. The rings were the last 4 nights. 91 of them, out of the bad winter, the winter my father died and the granaries were bare, and there was a run on the vault in the 3rd week of the fair, because it was the only place in the grass a woman could turn a ring into a month of bread. 91 women had walked down my passage in 1 week and put their wedding rings on my ledge, and I had priced each one out loud, correctly, with my own hand, and given them the number, and they had taken the number and gone. I had thought at the time that I was saving them. I have had a long time to consider what I was actually doing, which was buying 91 marriages at a discount from women who had no other buyer. Sire, Haver said, somewhere in the middle of the 3rd of those 4 nights, you will not have anything left. I will have the hold and the ledger and the crown, which are the kingdom's, not mine. You will have nothing that is yours. I put down the ring I was holding, thin gold, cast in a hurry, 30 years old, a good one, and I looked at that old man across 2 lamps at 2 in the morning, and I said the truest thing I said all that season. Haver, I have not had anything that was mine since I was 14 years old. It is not a sacrifice to give away a thing you have never once been able to enjoy. He looked at me a while. Then may I say something out of order, he said. You have never asked before. No, he set his pen down. Sire, whatever it is you are doing this for, and I am old, not stupid, it will not work. You cannot pay for it. That is what I have been trying to tell you since the 20th day. There is no number. And he picked his pen up again and said, 91, read me the next. The nearest we came to being caught was the 34th day, and it was in daylight, and it was my own fault. A woman came to the window at noon to redeem a bridle. Marta something, out of the southern bays. I had priced it myself 3 years before. She had the coppers in a cloth, and she had clearly been carrying that cloth for a year, and she put it on the ledge, and Cesc read the line, and the line said redeemed. She went white. I've the money, I've all of it. It's paid, Cesc said. It's not paid, I've got the who paid it. And Cesc, who had walked 1,100 head of my mother's horses out of my hold under his coat, looked at that woman and said, a debtor, and gave her the bridle. And she stood there in the passage with the cloth of coppers in her 2 hands and cried, and I was 6 feet away behind the shelves and could not move and could not breathe. She came back an hour later with her husband and asked again. She came back the next day. She asked Haver. She asked the fair men. She asked a man selling felt in the yard whether the king had gone mad. And the man selling felt said he'd heard the king never had been sane. And I stood in the crowd 4 feet away in a plain coat with the dust of my own fare on my boots and heard both of them, and went back inside. Nobody was humbled. Nothing was announced. There was no scene in my hall and no crowd to see it, and there never has been. There was a ledger, and my name in it 4,000 times over in the column where the poor go. Merritt found the line on the 39th day. She did not find it because I told her. She found it because she had gone to Haver to ask, in her quiet way, what would happen to Wren at the end of the fair. She had gone to ask about the assignment, about Vasca turns North Bays, about whether there was a form of words that would let her go too. And Haver done, 70 years of the ledger, a man who has never in his life said an indiscreet word, turned the book around and let her read it. I have asked him since why. He said, "Because I was tired, sire." He was 90 when he said it, and he died that winter, and I do not believe him and never have. She came down the passage with the lamp, and she was walking fast, which I had never seen, not once in 19 years. Reuven. She had never used my name. I stood up off the ledge. "The eastern grass," she said. Her voice was not steady. "Your mother's herd. It is only cattle. Don't," she stopped an arm's length away, and the lamp shook. "Don't do the face. Don't stand there and do the face at me. Merritt, 640 families, and you told nobody." She was breathing hard. "You beggared yourself in the dark and put your own name in the debtor's column, and you would have let me think." She stopped. She looked at the shelves. She looked back at me, and something in her face went through and came out the other side. "You would have let me think you were the man who priced a child." "I am the man who priced a child," I said. "I did it with this hand." "And what did your hand say?" "Nothing," I said. "It has never said anything since. It says nothing about the quilt you sleep under. It says nothing about a cup you have touched. I can price the 91 rings in that row and tell you which 3 were made in a hurry, and I cannot price a hair off your head, and I have not slept since midsummer, and I have not said one word of it to you because you have been a pledge in my family's hands since you were 9 years old, and I would rather be hanged than be one more Vesk who wants something from you." The lamp burned. Somewhere up the stair the fair was singing. Merritt Andre put the lamp down on the ledge. She did it slowly, and she got it level, and I watched her do it and understood that she was giving herself something to do with her hands, and that in 19 years I had never once seen her need to. "You great fool," she said, and her voice cracked straight down the middle. I stayed. The last day of the fair, Audric Farr came up the passage on a crutch with his leg in splints and his face the color of ash. And he had 31 measures, which was not 40, and he stood at the ledge with the money in both hands and could not make his mouth work. He had come from Faro, 4 weeks with a broken leg. He did the first 11 days in a felt cart and the rest on the crutch and a borrowed pony, and he had made the 31 measures by selling the only 2 things he had left, which were his sister's house at Little Vane, and his name to a granary man for 4 years of hauling he has not yet finished. He told me all of that later over 2 winters in pieces, the way men do. That day he could only stand there. "Audric Farr," Cesc said, reading, "40 measures against the granary, redeemed." Audric looked up. "Redeemed the 11th day," Cesc said. "It's written." "By who?" Cesc, who is 71, and who has served 2 Vesk kings and hated one of them, looked at that man for a while. "By a debtor," he said. "Take your marker home, hauler." So we went, all of us, down to the 3rd shelf, and I said to that child the sentence I had spent 40 days paying for. "Wrens, you are redeemed, you may go." She looked at the shelf. "Not yet," she said. "Wren, my markers aren't paid." She was quite firm about it. She pointed, the horse, the button, the bird's skull, the tuft of gray. "I left them so they'd know I'm coming back. I have to pay them or they won't know." Audric was crying on his crutch. Merritt had her hand over her mouth. "How do you pay them?" I asked. My voice was not much. "You come back for it," Wren said, as though it were the simplest arithmetic in the grass. "That's all it is, you come back." And she went along the shelf. She took the wooden horse with 3 legs and she gave it to Audric Farr, who went down on the flags with it in both fists, splints, and all. She took the blue button and put it in Merritt's hand and closed her fingers over it. She took the bird's skull to Cesc, who received it like a crown. The gray she pushed into the rough of the big bitch who suffered it. Then she reached past them all to the fourth space, the empty one, the one I had been afraid of for 12 nights. It was not empty. It had never been empty. It only looked empty from where I stood because the thing in it was flat and small and pushed back against the stone. It was a scrap of brass tally, on it scratched in enormous careful letters. RUVN. That one's still yours, Wren said. That one's not paid yet, so you'll know. 4,000 markers on my shelves. A widow's kettle, 91 wedding rings, and a piece of brass with my own name on it left by a 6-year-old against a debt no one had ever thought to name so that I would know somebody was coming back. I have been told I have a hard face. I want it recorded that it was no use to me at all. I did not take it. I could not have lifted it. It was Merritt who reached past me and picked it up off the shelf and put it into my hand and folded my fingers shut on it. And then she did not let go of my hand. Reuven Vesk, she said, in the flat, clear voice she uses for the foundlings and the fair men and kings. A man may pledge anything that's his. Is that still the wording? Merritt, is that still the wording? Yes. She reached up to her collar. There is a ring on a cord at her throat, and there has been for 19 years, and I have never asked, because it was hers and because I never ask. Cast iron, Andri work, the last of the eastern grass worn smooth. She lifted it over her head, and she put it down on the ledge of my own marker window. Then I'm pledging this, she said. Against a debt. What debt? The rest of my life, said Merritt Andri. It's a long one, I'll be a while paying, you'll have to hold it till I'm done. Every man in Tal Siren who has ever stood where she was standing has wanted a number out of me. That is the whole of my life's work. They put the thing on the ledge, and my hand tells them what it is worth, and my price is the price. I picked up the ring. Nothing, silence, all the way up my arm, the clean, unbroken silence of a bell under deep water. The last of a broken clan, worn 19 years against her heart, and the world would not tell me what it was worth, and it never will, because there is no number in the world large enough to be true, and I would not have believed a small one. So I did not price it. For the first time in 9 years, at my own window, I did not price a thing that was offered to me. I put it back in her hand, and I closed her fingers on it the way she had closed mine, and I held them shut. I won't take it, I said. Not that, not from you, never from you. My voice was going. Ask me for something instead. In 19 years, you have never asked me for one thing. Ask. Merritt looked at me for a long moment with her fist closed inside mine. Stay down here tonight, she said. It's cold on the stones and there's a spare quilt, and I'm tired of being the only one who sleeps in your vault. That was all she asked for. 19 years, and that was all she asked for, and I would have given her the grass from here to the salt roads, and she asked for a quilt. I stayed. The vault at Ashmark is a schoolroom now. The shelves are still there, I would not have them out. They are good oak and they were paid for honestly, which is more than can be said for the man who ordered them. But the markers are gone, all 4,000 of them, gone home to their kettles and their bridles and their bad winter fingers, and there is chalk dust on the third shelf where a small girl used to sit. The wording is changed. It took 2 years to do it properly in the open in council, with Haver done reading every line aloud twice, which is the only way a law is worth the brass it's tallied on. A man may pledge anything that is his, save a living soul. Vaska Tern seconded it. He has never asked me a single question, and I have never offered him a single answer, and we understand each other perfectly. Nobody in the grass knows about the eastern grass. Haver is dead. Sesk is dead. My mother's horses are somebody else's horses, and I could not tell you whose. Merritt knows. It is the only secret we keep, and we keep it badly, in the sense that she looks at me across a table sometimes, and I have to leave the room. Wren is 15. She is a hauler like her uncle, and she is loud, and she is the only person in Tal Siren who is not afraid of me in any degree whatsoever. And on the last day of the summer fair every year she comes up the passage and puts a copper on the ledge and says, "Redeeming." And I give her back the piece of brass with my name scratched on it, and she looks at it and gives it back to me and says the same thing every year, which is, "Not yet, keep it." It lives in my coat, not on the shelf, in my coat. 19 years I could tell you the worth of everything that came through my hands. I still can. I can hold a bridle and tell you the man's name who made it. But I keep in my pocket a scrap of brass worth less than a copper, and I sleep beside a woman whose hand I cannot weigh. And there is chalk dust on the third shelf, and I have never once, since that midnight, been able to put a price on a single thing that matters. I have stopped calling it a failing,